One of the most interesting design evolutions in the Final Fantasy series has to be the ninja job. Surprisingly, throughout the years, throughout different color palette changes and silhouette changes, it's been able to pretty much maintain its identity throughout the years. The ninja is one of the original Final Fantasy jobs that we first experienced in Final Fantasy I, but unlike some of the more popular jobs, the ninja has not really appeared in most of the popular games, and it is often presented as an upgrade to the thief job. Ninjas are best known for their throwable weapons and being one of the very first dual-wielding classes. I have always been a really big fan of the Final Fantasy series as a whole. I am really interested in history and art and video games, and I feel like Final Fantasy just kind of takes all of those things and pushes them into one big game series, and I just love it. I find a lot of joy from sitting down and analyzing the character designs of my favorite games. So today we are going to be sitting down and taking a look at the much underrepresented but still thoroughly loved ninja job. Before we begin, I just want to mention that unfortunately I have not played every game on this list yet, so I apologize if there is something that I seem to miss about a character or something really crucial about them in context of the game that I just didn't mention. And by the way, I am going to be taking a look at every design on my side screen over here. The very first game we're going to be talking about today is Final Fantasy I with the ninja job. So this is the earliest depiction of the ninja job. It is an upgrade from the thief job and overall a really simple design. The NES had a lot of color restraints on the system, so that is probably why the ninja is not depicted in black and they chose red instead. But instead of treating the color choices as a mistake, they actually took the red color and ran with it quite a bit in future designs in really interesting ways. And these color choices kind of molded the identity of the ninja a little bit. It's also understandably basic because ninjas need to be incredibly mobile and a lot of loose flowing fabrics and design elements would probably get in their way. The ninjas are depicted wearing uwagi jackets, which just mean jacket in Japanese, but the word is often used to refer to martial arts or karate jackets, and they have them tied off with a waist sash, and presumably these chainmail elements around their sleeve and neck area textures. The original ninja sprite appears in red in all of the editions of the game except the GBA version where it appears in green, which is kind of an offshoot of the thief, I suppose, because the thief was also pictured wearing green. Despite also being really simple, the headdress on this design is the most interesting thing to me. It is really reminiscent of early Persian and Ottoman headdresses, but it also looks a lot like the communist Russian military Budyanovka hat. So the Budyanovka is a really interesting hat. It's not an original creation to the Russians. It was actually inspired by the design of the helmets of 9th century Kievan Rus knights. And during this time in the 9th century, a lot of civilizations were seen with a similar styled cap, especially in the North Caucasus civilizations and the Iranian Alanian medieval kingdom. A lot of caps had this kind of design where it was longer on the sides and kind of a cone shape on top. In my opinion, the hat on this ninja design looks like it's made out of a fabric that matches the rest of the outfit, so it is probably a broadcloth styled cap. It's difficult to pinpoint an exact inspiration for this hat because it's appeared in so many different cultures, so to say the least, it is a very interesting headdress. And the design for the ninja job for Final Fantasy I is credited to Yoshitaka Amano and Koichi Ishii. The next game we're going to be talking about is Final Fantasy III with the ninja job. So the ninja job design from the original 1990 NES version of Final Fantasy III is pretty much identical to the ninja from Final Fantasy I as well. This is pretty standard for all of the designs in Final Fantasy III. So the designs we're going to be analyzing today are from the 2006 DS remake of Final Fantasy III. I like to compare the designs in release order, so keep Final Fantasy III in mind because we will be returning soon to look at those designs. The Final Fantasy III ninja job is also credited to Koichi Ishii. Next up is Final Fantasy IV with Edge. So we have talked about Edge before on the channel in the Thief analysis video, and the Thief and Ninja classes are super intertwined, especially in these earlier titles, so that is why I decided to include him in both of these videos. As we have previously extensively discussed, Edge is full of Persian and Moorish design influences. He has a really lavish and striking color scheme of purples, yellows, reds, and greens, and that greatly reminds me of ancient Persian costume and clothing. Vibrant colors, intricate designs, and flowy fabrics are huge aspects of Persian fashion. Looking at Edge through a ninja lens and less as a thief like we've done previously, his design is really reminiscent of depictions of desert bandits such as those from artworks depicting Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves from stories like 1001 Nights, and his long scarf seems to be a rendition of the Sanjaku Tenugi cloths of ninja, which were 3-foot long pieces of fabric that ninjas would wrap around their head and bodies to protect and obscure themselves. Edge is masking his face with a sheer veil that resembles the Turkish yashmak that was once used to obscure women's faces in public. This general concept of non-disclosure works in Edge's favor to both conceal his identity and his movements as a ninja. So if we go down the design now and look at his feet, his footwear appears to be armored similarly to his chest piece, but to me they also resemble kyahan wraps, which are a type of leg and footwear from feudal Japan that was wrapped around the shins and feet of soldiers to add more protection and padding. The footwear that Edge is wearing look a lot like an armored kyahan styled boot, as if they took inspiration from the silhouette of the kyahan and then kind of just made it armored instead. Edge is always going to be one of my favorite designs to talk about. I feel like every time I look at him, there's something different and interesting and new to talk about, and there are so many real-world influences that went behind the design choices they made with him. And Edge's design is credited to Yoshitaka Amano. Before moving on to the next game, I briefly want to talk about Final Fantasy IV After Years with the Eblon 4. So to briefly go over them, they are students of Edge's in the sequel title, The After Years, and all 4 of them represent their own unique element expressed through their unique skill set and color palettes. Their designs generally take cues from what we saw done with Edge's design, and each character is clothed in flowy garments that create movement and add a lot of visual depth to their designs. I think creating ninja designs is a bit tricky because it would be really easy to make a very stagnant outfit and just put them in really clingy black fabric that would obscure them and be very understandable for real world usage. But for a video game, you have to make something that appeals to the viewer's eye and looks interesting. And I think adding all of these flowy fabrics and different color palettes really aid in making them more interesting than just a blacked clothed ninja. In particular, the designs of Izayoi and Gecko feel like predecessors of design we're going to see in the future. Their use of webbing and chainmail-like textured paired with traditional Japanese-styled armor is really interesting and well done, and I feel like a lot of future designs that incorporated similar elements probably took inspiration from these characters. And just like with Edge, the character designs for the Eblon 4 are credited to Yoshitaka Amano. The next designs we're going to be talking about are from Final Fantasy V with the ninja job. So the designs from Final Fantasy V have a really similar silhouette of the ninjas that we've seen in previous games. Although maybe due to a limited pixel art style, the previous game's headgears for the ninja seemed more like a fabric cap, but the headpieces here seem more like open-face sallet helmets from the 15th century. Sallets were the ideal headgear for soldiers as they protected both the head and the neck, and they provided more visibility than the old bassinet helmets. Similar to the very first ninja designs in Final Fantasy I, the characters here also seem to be wearing uwagi jackets with waist sash belts. And like Edge in Final Fantasy IV, they have scarves obscuring their faces, and they are all wearing shades of blue, black, and purple. And that is a design choice that we're gonna see in basically every single ninja design in the future. I think that the designs in Final Fantasy V took all of the best design elements from the games before them and combined them into one really cohesive and well done ninja design. And the designs for the ninja job are credited to Kazuko Shibuya. The next game we're going to be talking about is Final Fantasy VI with Shadow. So I feel like Shadow is a really different interpretation of the ninja and really different from what has been explored previously. I feel like this design in conjunction with Final Fantasy V really informed the majority of the future ninja fashion choices, and it's more of a dark direction than what was previously explored. They seem to be moving away from the red that was introduced with Final Fantasy I and II, and more into a dark and shadowy direction. Shadow, as his name might suggest, is garbed almost entirely in black as if he was a dark shadow himself. Interestingly, he is also embellished with a lot of golden and blue elements and has a multicolored sash around his waist. In reality, this is far from what a ninja would or honestly should wear, but the inclusion of these colors brings back some of the Arabian bandit type inspiration that they explored with Final Fantasy IV's Edge. Also, much like Edge, Shadow has gilded armor pieces and golden tassels and fringes throughout his design. So there is actually something really interesting about Shadow's design that might go unnoticed at first, but if you take a look at the pattern on his headscarf, it is actually very similar to the pattern of Locke's shirt, which is the thief character in that game. As we know from previous titles, the ninja and thief jobs are really intertwined, as the ninja is often an upgrade from the thief job. So I think it's really interesting that they gave some shared design elements between Locke and Shadow here. I just felt like this was a really cool way that they tied the ninja and thief classes together, since they've always been quite intertwined with each other. And the design for Shadow is credited to Yoshitaka Amano. Now, let's take everything we just discussed and throw it out the window, because next we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII's Yuffie. While I more readily like to define Yuffie as a thief class character, it would be wrong to overlook her in this video because she is clearly defined as both a master materia thief and a member of a ninja clan. There is not much that ties Yuffie to the previous designs of ninjas, but I do find a couple things pretty interesting, especially the yellow ribbons attached to her pauldron armor remind me of the abundant amount of golden tassels attached to the outfits of both Final Fantasy IV's Edge and Final Fantasy VI's Shadow. Yuffie's outfit colors are overall pretty earthy, and this reminds me a little bit of the Eblon 4 since they were all related to different elements. And I think this also reflects how Yuffie doesn't really live in the big city like the majority of the other characters, and she is a little bit more tied to nature since she lives outside of Midgar, and she has a bit more of a connection to the earth compared to the other characters perhaps. Although you would think her color palette doesn't really work for a ninja, I would argue that the beige, khakis, and green colors actually enable her to blend in with an outdoor environment very well. So as a ninja who is often outside or in the desert, this color palette works really well for her. This is generally how I feel about Yuffie as a ninja, but if you're interested in looking at her through a thief lens, you should check out my thief fashion video where I talked about her a little bit differently. And Yuffie's design is credited to Tetsuya Nomura. Neither Final Fantasy 8, 9, or 10 have a designated ninja class or character, so we will be going over to Final Fantasy 11's ninja class next. I definitely feel like the designs in this game take a lot of inspiration from Final Fantasy VI with Shadow's dark color palette and skin-tight clothing. I feel like they definitely chose a new direction with these designs compared to previous designs with many scarves and sashes and loose fabrics. It seems like they generally avoided flowy fabrics, and it feels more realistic and functional, although personally I don't have an issue with unfunctional design elements, and I think they can be really visually stimulating and interesting even if they don't really serve a purpose or don't make sense. But I digress. So I believe there are three main gear sets: the basic artifact set, the relic armor, and the Empyrean armor. The artifact and Empyrean sets are quite similar, both following a dark black color scheme with metal embellishments and some armored pieces. Earlier in the video, we discussed the Eblon 4 from Final Fantasy IV's After Years, and I feel like the fishnet cutout sections of the artifact armor set are quite reminiscent of the chainmail and mesh aspects that we saw in those designs. And then the Empyrean set has a very similar field cap to our very first ninjas from Final Fantasy I. To move on to the relic armor set now, compared to the other two sets, I feel like this one is quite different and I like it. I really like that this one is red because it feels like a direct homage to the original red designs from Final Fantasy I and III. In general, this set feels really inspired by Tosei Gusuku's samurai armor, especially with the fabric around the waist that resembles a kusazuri, which was a skirt-like piece of armor that protected the lower body and upper legs of a samurai. The pauldrons also feel reminiscent of Samurai Sode shoulder pieces in design and construction. All three of these sets surround the main Uwagi jacket, which has been a fairly consistent element in several of the ninja designs, and I feel like it really ties them together, and the designs for Final Fantasy XI's ninja class seem to be credited to Tetsuya Nomura and Nobuyushi Mihara. Now we're going to head back to Final Fantasy III and take a look at the 2006 DS re-release that introduced the concept of having unique outfits for every character within a job, just like we saw in Final Fantasy V. Following a similar progression system as most of the job-based titles, the ninja is an upgrade from the thief job, which we have previously discussed extensively on the channel. These designs are a combination of both the original red designs from the earlier titles and the newer all-black design direction they've gone with. And I feel like it's a really successful combination of both old and new elements. The characters are seen wearing red and black Uwagi type jackets, and they have these lighter golden beige waist sashes around their bodies that remind me of the golden flowy sashes worn by Edge and Shadow. I feel like these designs are really truthful to the earlier games and fits as a design for a Final Fantasy III remaster, because overall they feel a lot more flowy than the direction chosen for Final Fantasy XI, for example. Two of the characters, Lunith and Arc, are wearing similar sallet type headpieces like those of the original ninja job in Final Fantasy I, and Ingus is wearing a headband similar to that of Final Fantasy VII's Yuffie and the ninja job in Final Fantasy XI. And the designs for the Final Fantasy III Remaster Ninja Job are credited to Akihiko Yoshida. Both Final Fantasy XII and XIII don't have any ninja characters, so the next game we're going to be talking about is Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns with the Purple Lightning Flash Shinobi garb for Lightning. Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns uses a garb system which allows Lightning to change jobs and get a whole bunch of awesome and different outfits. Even though some of the garbs can be kind of questionable, I'm honestly always a little bit impressed by all the cool and unique garbs the team was able to come up with for this system. I think that they were really able to come up with some things that feel a lot different than what was done in previous games, and it doesn't just feel like a regurgitation of old designs, but really something new with taking inspiration from those old designs at the same time. Lightning's outfit here is almost completely purple, but she has some black and golden accents thrown about the design. The base of the design is a tight purple bodysuit with a similar concept to Shadow's bodysuit. Purple has been consistently featured on ninjas, as we saw on Final Fantasy IV's Edge, Final Fantasy V's Lena and Ferris, and Final Fantasy VI's Shadow. For some reason, in popular culture, ninjas are often depicted wearing purple. We see this in Dragon Ball's Murasaki, the Hidden Sound Village in Naruto, and the ninja Sonic from One Punch Man, just to name a few. And it's really unclear why this decision is made, because purple holds no significant historical meaning for ninjas that I know of. But my best guess is just that ninjas are characteristically dressed in dark nighttime colors, and just dressing them in black would be kind of boring and one-dimensional, so the use of purple and blue is common just to add another layer of interest and have something interesting for the eye to look at. So I'm not really against it, I just don't really understand why it's done, and it doesn't really seem to be a lot of information on that, but I just think it's a design element just to add more intrigue and layering elements. So to go back to Lightning's outfit now, if we take a look at her arms, they're full of strappy design elements, and this kind of feels like a different take on the fishnet and chainmail type designs that we saw on the Eblin 4 again. And then going back to other design elements that we also discussed previously, her half skirt and scarf feels like another rendition of the flowy drape designs that we've seen in a lot of ninja characters. The designs for Final Fantasy XIII's garb system are really credited here and there. There are a bunch of people that are said to have worked on them, but it is most commonly credited to Toshiyuki Idehana, Tetsuya Nomura, Isamu Kamiko Karuya, and Toshitaka Matsuda. And the last game that we're going to be talking about that includes a ninja design is Final Fantasy XIV with the ninja job. I have recently started playing Final Fantasy XIV myself finally, so I am happy to inform that I will be a lot more savvy and informed when talking about the garb system in this game. I now understand completely how there are a bunch of different artifact armor sets for the different expansions and which one assigns to which game. So hopefully I will not be making any more mistakes in the foreseeable future when it comes to talking about the artifacts and gear sets when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV. In the past, I was, or at least trying to talk about the base game gear set, but I think I'm actually going to briefly go over each expansion because it feels wrong to just go past them now. But I'm only going to be talking about them briefly because I think that I would want to make videos in the future where I sit down and talk in depth about the gear sets from Final Fantasy XIV, because there's just so much content to like talk about and enjoy and analyze there that it would make this video way too long, and I think it would just be better served in its own video. So if you are interested in seeing that, let me know. Enough about that. Let's head back to the analysis now and take a look at the Realm Reborn artifact set. The base game ninja set is introduced in a Realm Reborn, and right away I can see clear inspiration from Final Fantasy VI's Shadow. I really feel that Shadow became the main inspiration for many of the late character designers when it came to the ninja job. Similar to the construction of Shadow's bodysuit, the Realm Reborn ninjas have tight body conforming outfits and plated armor molded to the character's body shape, which is something we saw on Shadow. They are also wearing scarf masks on their face that obscure everything else besides their eyes and tie off in the back, very similar again to Shadow's design. The headscarf and waist sashes in these designs add a much needed fluidity to the outfits and sets it apart from the designs in Final Fantasy XI that seem to lack that aspect of fluidity. I feel like this return to flowy elements, as subtle as it may be in this design, feels more true to the ninjas that we've seen established previously in the series. And again, these designs are combining shades of black and purple as we've seen previously a bunch. And I just want to point out the little red ties on the boots that remind me of the original ninjas that were dressed in red. I don't know if this is a callback or they just used a different color to break up the monotony of this outfit, the monochrome of this outfit. I think it adds a little bit of flavor to the outfit that would have otherwise been missing. Also in a Realm Reborn is the Koga set, which is an alternate of the main set. And the changes to this design feel even more Shadow-esque. They deepen the blacks and purples, and it makes it a lot more extravagant, a lot more saturated. These saturated colors feel a lot more Amano-esque, since he notoriously did not shy away from using unique color combinations and deep saturated colors. But overall, everything I said about the first set is still applicable about the Koga set as well. Before we move on, I just want to acknowledge the chainmail used on the sleeves. I really appreciate how they expanded on this concept even further. It makes the design feel like an extension of Final Fantasy V's Gallif's design in construction, with a tight body piece and then kind of billowy chainmail sleeves. Next, we're going to be talking about the Heavensward, Stormblood, and Shadowbringer sets all together, since I feel like they share many similar design choices and influences. So right off the bat, all three designs incorporate a long neck scarf, which is probably another reimagined version of the Senjaku Tenuki cloth that we discussed earlier that ninjas wore. Compared to some of the previous designs, the Heavensward and Stormblood sets are considerably less armored, and they're a lot more reminiscent of the flowy fabric designs in Final Fantasy IV. The Heavensward design especially reminds me of Izayoi from the Eblon 4 with her open coat and sleeveless top underneath. While all three of these designs use black as a base color, Heavensward uses blue as an accent color while the other two are using red. Red has not really been used recently besides in the Final Fantasy XI Koga Relic set, and I like that they started to bring red back here and move a little bit away from the purple. It just really feels like a nice callback to the original Red Ninjas and just something fun and different, since so many of the designs have been either black and blue or black and purple lately. And even though red was probably used as a fill-in color because there was a lot of constraints on the NES, it has still become iconic regardless, and I think that's a hallmark of a really good design, is that even when you're making something because of constraints, it still becomes iconic and it's still good. In general, I think that's a really good lesson that just because we have constraints or limitations doesn't mean that the thing that we're making has to be bad. And then Shadowbringers by far incorporates the most red in its design and has some pretty cool armored chainmail designs going on. But then in Endwalker, we return to black and purple and have a classic Uwagi jacket again. Compared to the more muted colors of the Realm Reborn set, the Endwalker set has more saturated purples like those we saw in the Lightning Returns garb. And it also has a more prominent belt sash, similar to Edge's waist ensemble that he has going on. So we talked about Izayoi from the Eblon 4, but I also mentioned to keep Gecko in mind. And I think that's because, at least to me, the Shadowbringer's design feels very inspired by his original design. As far as I can tell, in my opinion, the use of chainmail and the red elements on the scarf feel really similarly done to how his outfit was constructed. For Final Fantasy XIV, Ayumi Name is generally credited for a lot of character designs, but realistically, a large team of people probably worked together to make all the designs, including the ninja job. So we can accredit the ninja job design to a whole bunch of Square Enix employees that came together and worked really hard to make something really cool and amazing. So that is all of the Final Fantasy ninjas and my design analysis for all of them. I hope that you were able to find some value in these. I love talking about historical fashion influences. So I hope that you were able to maybe walk away with something that you didn't know before, or maybe at least have a newfound appreciation for character design in video games. Feel free to leave a comment letting me know who your favorite ninja is or who your favorite design is, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!